Welcome. This is Burak Yolga. I'm the founder of Forceget Supply Chain and Logistics. I have my good friend Isaac Hedzroni. He's joining us today from Imprint Genius. How are you doing, man?
Doing great, doing great. How you doing?
Good, good. I was in Asia for almost 2 weeks. I was in Vietnam, Thailand, Hong Kong, and China last 2 weeks, and it was like a very stressful time. Obviously, to getting all the updates with the U.S. time zone with the tariffs, and also it was fun same time. I lived in China 7 years. I haven't been there for 5 years since COVID. I know that you live part-time in the US, part-time in Asia. So just tell us briefly about you, what you do, what your company does, and then we start the webinar.
Yeah, for sure. So I run a product sourcing agency and we help people source products from the best factories in the world. I've been running it for about 8 years now. We source from almost every manufacturing country. And I'm also the sourcing guy on social media. So I make content about manufacturing and product sourcing. And my whole goal is to help people source products. And, this whole world of manufacturing overseas can feel really scary, especially in times like this. So again, our goal is to do things like this, hop on webinars, make content to ultimately, answer everyone's questions and make this a little less daunting.
Perfect. Isaac, it's been a long time we know each other, but thanks for the short notice you joined the webinar. I decided to organize this pretty much beginning of this week, and Isaac's helping. So let's jump. Actually, we see every day there, like we talk with a lot of Amazon brands, e-commerce brands, and there are a lot of rumors in the market when the tariff's going to change, when it's going to be lowered. We don't know yet, but also the tariff situation is not something new. When the President Trump, he was elected for the first time, he brings some tariff, but it wasn't this high. So now we see over 145%. A lot of companies, they pause products, they cancel shipments, they cancel manufacturing, but a lot of people, they need product to start selling so they can actually make money, right? So let me ask this. How easy do you think to switch manufacturing from China to US overnight in 6 months, 1 year? Is it really easy? Is it really realistic? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think moving manufacturing to the US is very unrealistic, especially within a short time frame. Um, Now there are some categories that, the US does manufacture, but for us to be able to go and move over, the amount of manufacturing there is in the US in China to the US is really not reasonable. Now, as for moving manufacturing outside of China, it's definitely doable. It depends on your product category as well. For categories like apparel, right, that's probably the easiest category to shift over to other countries because it's relatively easy to manufacture. It's easy to set up manufacturing lines there, and there is a lot of apparel manufacturing. But once we go into more technical products, that is where there's more of a challenge. Vietnam has been kind of the best China plus one for a while for technical manufacturing. So we're seeing a lot of people obviously move the manufacturing there. But I mean, the main tip I'm saying is, if you want to go and do an easy switch over to a lot of these countries, actually working with Chinese owned Vietnamese factories or Chinese owned Cambodian factories and working with a lot of your existing vendors to come up with additional strategies is the most helpful because sometimes, if you don't know what you're doing and you go into these new markets in new countries, you can have a lot of friction.
I agree. I was in Canton Fair, Hong Kong Electronic Fair, Global Source, and I start seeing a lot of signs saying that we have a factory in Cambodia, Vietnam, Indonesia. I know that you live partially part of your year in Asia. What country do you live? I think it's in Indonesia, correct?
Yeah, I live in Bali,
And then
part of the year.
you travel a lot to China, other countries, right? You have a team in different part of the world. What do you feel when it comes to uh, start sourcing products from Vietnam or other markets? What I saw in the trade shows last 2 weeks that I visited, I went over 4 trade shows. There are a lot of suppliers. They mentioned they have a factory in Vietnam, Cambodia, but it's very hard to verify that. So many of them might be saying, hey, we manufacture this product in that country, but unless you have the video proof, you visit it there, you hire a sourcing agent or QA, QC company, they might be sending products to Malaysia, Vietnam, just change the label. I'm not saying all of them doing it. Some of them doing it. I see so many black hat tactics in the market. There are a lot of freight forwarders from China saying, hey, that's normal, but it's totally illegal. What is your feedback? How can you verify if they really made a product in Vietnam versus they ship ready finished product and then relabel those products?
For sure. I mean, the easiest way to do it that wouldn't cost anything would be to hop on a video chat or WeChat video and have them take you around the factory in Vietnam. And then you can you can see the production line and see, is this a full scale production? Is this just final assembly? Is this just relabeling? You know, are the products coming off this production line aligned with what I'm currently purchasing from this factory? So that would be like the free way to do it. And then you can also hire like a QC agency to go in and do a factory audit, spend a few $100s and kind of get that done. And then they'll be able to give you that reporting and verifiable documentation there.
How do you feel about people? I'm sure they are approaching you. Hey, we want to move our manufacturing from China to Mexico or China to Vietnam. What are the steps? Because I know that it takes a long time, right? You need to work on the design, the packing details, you get a sample, you agree on the pricing, you negotiate trade terms, actual manufacturing. It takes almost 3 to 6 months. Do you feel it's the accurate time? What do you recommend people who wants to switch from China to other countries?
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, like you might have a really hard time doing it without using a sourcing agency because it's going to be all about relationships right now. If you just go and start trying to work with a brand new factory you've never worked with, you try to or book capacity in Mexico, like there's so many variables and there's so many more ways you can mess up. And the chances of that factory giving you the capacity you need or taking on the MOQ that you're requesting um, without you having a prior relationship or experience in that space is low. So yes, it's going to take you a long time, let's say like 6 months to properly prepare and get things moving, maybe 3 to 6 months. But
Yeah,
if you do work with people who like already have boots on the ground or experience working with these factories, you might be able to get in. But even with that, like a lot of these factories right now realize that they're like the prettiest girl at the ball now, and their MOQs are increasing, their capacities are getting booked up, working with other factories, and they're not dying for the same kind of business that they would have accepted a few months ago.
correct. And also, I highly recommend not to stop relationship with your existing supplier. What I realize is companies are start looking at sourcing products from different countries. Even if the tariff will go down, it's not going to be zero. That's what President said yesterday. Maybe 90% of product e-commerce and Amazon sellers they manufacture, they source from China. Now that's going to shift to 70%, maybe 50%. I don't think uh, everything and anything can be shifted globally to other markets. There are so many products, raw material manufacturing, the box suppliers, the actual equipment, what manufactures those products are made in China too. All the machinery, equipment, raw material. So it takes really time to like shift those products to different countries, assemble. It takes a lot of time and planning. So in short term, maybe if you source products from China 90%, you can try to do like 20, 15 or 25, 30% shifting it, but you can't really exit from China. And I think you shouldn't also. How do you feel, Isaac? What do you recommend people, how they should manage their relationship with their existing suppliers? Because eventually they're going to need them a year later, 2 years later, or they will need their relationship in other Southeast Asia countries. Because what I saw in the event is still factories in Vietnam starts working, they run by the suppliers in China. It's not just 100% pure investors or exporters from Vietnam. They have strong relationship with the suppliers from China.
Yeah, I mean, I think that every Chinese factory is going to be, especially if they're a bigger factory, they're all working on building out infrastructure outside China. They've been working on that since 2018, since the first tariffs came
Correct.
in. right? Maybe even before that, because the labor costs have just been so high. You're looking at labor costs that could be 3 to 8 times higher than a lot of other regions, other manufacturing regions. Um, so burning any bridges is not the right move. Keeping good relationships with these factories because they might be that bridge for you to manufacture in a lot of other countries in the future. And that's not really going to change. Like I spent a lot of time visiting factories in like Sri Lanka and Cambodia, for example. Sri Lanka has an entire port city that's a Chinese territory at their
Yeah.
capital. You need like a Chinese visa to go into it. Cambodia, certain areas literally look like China. Everything's in Chinese. All the restaurants are Chinese. Every person is Chinese. So like all these countries have a lot of Chinese infrastructure. So like to think that you can just completely get out of China within your supply chain. No, keep your relations with these factories because you don't know like how things are going to shift and change in the future.
Right. I definitely agree. What is your criteria? Do you think? I mean, people want to find a solution in the short term. Even if we say, hey, don't panic, don't change. I know that a lot of companies they can't afford 150% tariff payments. The shipping lines now they're asking companies to sign a guarantee letter in case people abandon the goods on the port. There's going to be a lot of extra charges. So this is a problem. Uh, do you feel people should be doing short-term planning, 1 to 3 months, or they should be looking into uh, more mid-term planning, 6 to 12 months, shifting the supplier, look for a relationship, new countries, they want to go maybe visit Mexico, Vietnam, Thailand. What is your expectation or what is your existing customers are doing now as a strategy?
I think that they're taking diversification a lot more seriously, and even divesting even out of Asia. Like, so what we're seeing is we're even talking to customers that like, I've already divested out of China, so they're fine right now, but they're worried about the reciprocal tariffs coming back after the pause in the 90-day pause. So I think it's really important to go and understand first off, like where can my product be manufactured? Really good way to figure out that is ask ChatGPT. Hey, I
Mhm.
manufacture this kind of product. What countries do you think I could even manufacture in? Do you think it's even possible? Right? And it's going to give you a pretty good answer. And then that's your baseline, right? Now you know, okay, most likely the best place to manufacture this is going to be India, right? And then you're going to go and start sourcing from that specific country. Now, from a short-term perspective, like I don't think you should be too brash. Like I think there's going to be some type of resolution. I definitely would not recommend shipping product right now at 245% plus plus. Um, the best thing to do is kind of just hold, wait, and then start building contingency supply chains. But don't act, I guess, too brash with it, and just kind of wait to see how things change because literally every few days there's a different rule. Things are changing. So
Yeah.
if you're going to go and shift millions of dollars worth of purchasing, and then a couple of days later
What
everything
one
changes.
One thing that we start recommending people is start using some bonded warehouses. We just signed a bonded warehouse partnership with a partner in LA, and
Hmm.
one of our customers wanted to ship to Kansas City. So it's a good option to, if you guys don't know what this bonded warehouse is, tax-free, duty-free, tariff-free zone, like a warehouse location where you can ship your products, and from there you can start distributing slowly. So if you ship a full container, 1,000 cartons, cocktail shakers you can actually store those products 1 month, 2 months, and you can start partially importing between 200%, between 200 to 300 cartons. You can do that. So this way, it's a better cash flow, and you can wait and see. And the worst scenario, if you don't have money to pay the tariff, if the tariffs are not posed, then you can start re-exporting those products and start selling on Canada, Mexico, Australia, UK, Europe. So there are different options that people are talking. What options do you hear, Isaac? There are a lot of black hat tactics, but what options people are considering except just posing if they can't start sourcing from different country? Do you hear other options as well?
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously lots of black hat, and I'm not vouching for that or supporting all the black hat stuff, but um, the bonded warehousing is the best way to overall delay. There's different changes with de minimis all the time. I've been hearing different things about, I'm still trying to get the confirmation here. People's telling me different things, but that de minimis is going away on May 2nd, but there's still going
Yeah.
to be Section 321 from shipments not coming from China and Hong Kong. So, so there's potentially opportunity there. There's a quick little savings that you can get is switching from XWorks, switching to XWorks from FOB, which will lower your costing a tiny bit, right? But Brock, you could talk a little bit probably on that.
Right.
But what you're trying to do is you're trying to lower your taxable value of the product as much as possible. Um, Additionally, if you legitimately, I'm not saying like fake this, but like if you legitimately spend a ton of money on research and development with a factory, and the factory was factoring in all that R&D cost into the product cost into the FOB value,
Yeah.
like hey, I'm not saying do this off of a product that doesn't have any research and development, but if like they actually spent like $100,000 on R&D, like
Yeah.
separating those invoices out and paying R&D separately, because you really don't need to, is another way to kind of lower your taxable value.
Exactly. I was talking to a client of mine this morning. They are doing steel products, tumblers, $6 almost FOB price. And he was
Mhm.
asking how they can break down the invoice. I tell them don't make it too complicated. Eventually, the custom brokers, they have legal responsibilities. So there are some of the items in the product manufacturing cost are can be taxable or cannot be taxable. For example, he was asking whether they can only, for example, write down the raw material cost of that. I said you can't do that because eventually the custom is not caring about the raw material. They're asking whatever you transport in the container, whatever you import into country, then you need to classify that product. If it is a tumbler, if it is stainless steel, if it is ABS or polyester, whatever is the product, you need to actually write down on the invoice. And each HTS code is actually defining what is the correct product, which means if you import a tumbler, you can't put that it's a bathroom towel, right? You need to put what is the correct product, what is made of. But you can actually separate some of the cost. It could be mold cost, it could be like design cost, it could be like custom made products with different design, different color. So you can actually deduct those if you are including in the past for the unit cost $6. You could do maybe 5.5 or 5.45, $5. But if you go from $6 to $2, the custom has the record of this. Like they have the average product cost, and also whatever you import in the past, they have the record, and then they can come back after you for the last 3 years, whatever you import. So if you manufacture the product for $6, now if you start declaring that suddenly $2, they will like, hey, same supplier, same product, same ASIN, same SKU, same weight. All the details are recorded on the bill of lading, commercial waste packing list. And if you start dropping the price 70%, they're gonna catch this. So that's why you need to be like really careful about how you do it. But if you have some of the part that you think that you can ask the supplier to deduct from the invoice, I think it's doable. But don't just go and start lowering the invoice value 70%. It's gonna definitely flag the shipment. And CBP is like super aggressive and super careful, which it's their job. So what about so I'm actually glad that we break down this how to declare the invoice and then the bonded warehouse options. What do you feel about the options right now for the sellers? If they're selling on e-commerce and Amazon, they have a very heavy price strategy. Like they can't increase the price very heavily because then they're going to lose the best ranking. So I feel people need to use their inventory smartly. What do you feel about the strategy? How people should maintain their inventory existed uh, in the US and they need to reorder. Do you feel it's a smart to like don't look at the game order by order, but you could actually think this is your annual purchase price? So if you imported already 3 containers and by the end of the year you were planning to add 6 containers, you can actually think it's 9 containers, and you can try to understand what's the total landing cost annually what's a good strategy to understand, like imported products? Should we sell it from the old price? Should we increase the price? What's your recommendation?
Well, I think that right now it might be hard to increase pricing because people have lots of inventory, right? So until like the cycle goes through where people are running out of product, right, or having to pay the additional tariffs, then a lot of brands are gonna, keep on selling at the low cost. The other thing is that the Chinese factories are going to fraudulently import the products, and they're gonna keep on importing all these products at almost no taxes. So if you're going to go and increase your pricing significantly, and then your competition is going to keep the pricing the same, then it's going to be very hard to compete. Now, the thing is, you also don't want to then sell out of your goods and then ruin your listing. So I think, yeah, increasing your costing a little bit. And if you need to explain that using the tariffs as explanation, slow down your sales a bit to keep your listing. Now, if you are a Shopify-based seller, what I've been seeing a lot of vendors do, or brands do, is they offer a wait and save discount. So there's the same existing price, right? If you're going to go and purchase right now. But if you're willing to purchase now and have it shipped in July, you might get a 25% discount on the product.
Oh, that's
Um,
interesting.
yeah. And we're seeing a lot of people have a lot of success with that because they're able to still run their ads and get their conversions and get cash flow in the door now. And they're kind of just making the bet that by that time frame, the tariffs will decrease and they'll get more inventory and they'll be able to go and keep it running.
Okay. What is the best strategy to start negotiating with the new suppliers that you find? Because you don't know how long the tariff situation is going to go. Even if it is posed, uh, you don't know if 3 months later, 6 months later, it can come back. So I think it's a good option to have new suppliers in the list, start negotiating, start getting the samples. Do you feel people should be looking at long-term contracts, or they don't want to tie up themselves for the long term? If they want to do a case by case, maybe the supplier will not um, care that much if there's no contract. What's the strong negotiation point? If they know that you source from China, should you tell them, hey, you're going to be my plan B, plan C? Or they're like, hey, they shouldn't mention this. What is the supplier's approach to the new businesses, do you think, in the other markets?
Um, like how you should go and have like the relations with the actual
Yeah.
factories.
No, for the new suppliers that you're looking for. You're buying products from China, but now you want to start
Oh,
sourcing from Turkey or Mexico. Should you tell them, hey, look, I'm coming to you because of the tariff? Should you not mention that?
I mean they might know, right? But I think that they are going to try to increase pricing from before based off the tariff. They know they have the leverage there. The thing is like you don't have to necessarily tell them your export country. So you can go and tell them to start, yeah, we're going to be exporting into, right, getting FOB costs or export costs and saying, if they ask you, be like, yeah, we're going to be exporting into Europe or whatever it is. And then
Yeah.
if you really think that they're going to increase pricing because you're American, right? And you have this issue with, because it's only US companies that have this problem, only US shipments. So, you know, negotiate based off you shipping everything to London, and then after you have everything negotiated, like, actually, I'm gonna maybe import into the US instead. You know?
What is the best way to, I mean, yeah, I mean, I really think that that's a pain point right now. If I go and I want to source product from uh, Malaysia, they know that I'm coming from US, and I never sent inquiries before to Malaysian companies, but now I'm like, hey, I need solution. So they're gonna use that as a leverage. Everybody wants to make money in the business. You
Yeah.
can't expect just to they match the price, but then you can make a basic calculation. If you buy a product from China for $10, your landing cost is going to be what, like $25 now without actually shipping. So let's say $27. Versus if you buy the same product from Malaysia for $15, your landing cost might be $17. So I don't think you should be too brutal about the pricing versus trying to save money. So this is, I think, a smart way to do it. Uh, where do you like you've sourced different products? Where do you see like a gap between the Chinese supplier, the pricing versus Southeast other suppliers or India? You mentioned about textile, for example, Turkey. Is there like a big difference between suppliers from China to other countries in your experience in the past? Or mostly prices are similar, 10%, 20% discount?
I'd say 100% cotton products, especially if they're like heavier weight, like that kind of stuff, is way cheaper to do in countries like Pakistan and Egypt and India. Um, because there's a lot of actual cotton production in those regions, and then your labor cost is a tiny fraction of that. And then you can also factor in free trade agreements. So like there's free trade agreements between Africa and the US. So you literally have duty free. I mean, now you have the 10%, but so when you factor all those pieces in, like we do a lot of times, we do a lot of like heavyweight cotton hoodies and t-shirts and that kind of stuff. And your cost reduction there is like 30 to 40% sometimes comparatively to China. So I think it depends category to category. I'd say for the most part though, you might see an increase in cost. In let's say in Vietnam. Unless you're doing very high volume. Like Cambodia might have the decrease in cost, but you're producing 20,000 units. So, but you have the benefits of of having the low tariffs and stuff like that. But just China's just so efficient within their production process that it can be
Yeah.
tricky.
When I was in China, when was the last time you were in China, Isaac? Have you been
Uh,
recently?
yeah, October.
Okay. Um, I haven't been there 5 years. So when I went this time, I saw there's a huge difference compared to 5 years ago. They had so many brand new electric car companies like Xiaomi, Huawei. They
Hmm.
made crazy design for like 20, 25,000 end user selling prices, electric cars. They have a lot of high-tech products. So actually, after COVID, 2019, 2020, the Xi Jinping was mentioned China is not going to be anymore a cheap manufacturing place. We want to focus on the high-tech products, right?
Yeah.
And I start seeing that they start having a lot of drones, different robots, different electric cars. So it's a lot of add value items. And the way I think they approach this business is they don't want to, I mean, they can't manufacture that cheap anymore because the labor cost in China in a good factory, 5, 6,000 RMB at least. So
Hmm.
$900 versus Vietnam, $300. In some countries are even cheaper. But what I liked about China is they learn how to manufacture last 30 years, last 10 to 15 years, they specialize about exporting. Last 5 years, they learn branding. So that's kind of scary for a lot of actually companies in the world that how Chinese suppliers are evolving. So when I went to Vietnam, I see that companies still need 5, 10, 15 years maybe to learn everything China learned in last 30 years. India the same. Plus, I see unfortunately there are a lot of scams. Some people I see in the WhatsApp group chat. I'm part of a lot of like different WhatsApp group chats, and some people say, "Hey, I sent it money to India. There was a scam. I sent the money to Thailand. There was a scam." Question is, let's say, how your company validates, verifies the supplier if there's no Alibaba, and what's the best way to find suppliers if people want to do this directly? Let's say not through your company. How can they
Yeah.
safely do business in the new countries?
It's hard. It's really hard to safely do business, especially moving off platform, moving off of an Alibaba, because Alibaba does give you some level of protection. For us, it's been, factories we've met at trade shows and flying to those countries, factories we've been introduced to through other partners, or, a lot of our employees have have worked with these factories a lot in the past. If you're going just like very I guess if you want to verify a factory and make sure that they're legitimate, you could reach out to like the local associations. So let's say you're reaching out, you want to work with a Colombian factory. There's like Colombia Tax, and like there's Pro Colombia. It's like I'm just giving an example, right? Pro Colombia is like their export board for apparel. And so you can reach out to the export board and say, hey, look, I'm looking for a specific factory like this. I'm talking to this factory. Can you vouch for them? You know? And the export boards and the associations, if they're like members, right now there's some type of like government body, there's some type of body that is going to tell you, is this factory a scam or not? Are they reputable?
Mm,
I think that like that is a way to do it. But yeah, I think people are ultimately not realizing how high risk it is to go outside of China. They don't realize how easy it is to source from China. They don't
mm,
realize they think China is a scam, Alibaba is a scam. But China and Alibaba are the places that you're the least likely to get scammed, in
okay.
my opinion. So, you know, just don't be brash in this because again, the chances of like you messing up if you're moving too fast and looking over the small things, is high.
Okay. And what about the manufacturing capacities? I know that you were in Colombia, you were in other countries. Compared to China, which country you would probably, of course, it depends on the production or the call, like product types. You
Yeah.
mentioned like periods of different countries, but what is your top three countries alternative look for?
Yeah, I mean, production capacity is a big issue, right? Like even Vietnam, they're trying to scale up as fast as possible, but you know, it's not fast enough. From India ha still has like a lot of capacity, and there's a huge manufacturing scene there, obviously. The whole thing is like a lot of these countries that you're going to go to through LATAM, through Africa, through Southeast Asia, their minimums are going to be very high because
Yeah.
their whole infrastructure, like yeah, they'll have some small re factories as well with low MOQs, but that's going to be for lower quality product that's not for export. The factories that are big are set up for large scale programming to take on the Nike orders and the Levi orders and stuff like that. So like I've been to factories in Cambodia with 50,000 piece MOQs, and I've tried to send them 20,000 piece of programs and they've said no. So
Why? Why did I say no?
because 50,000 is the minimum. It's too
Okay.
small,
Okay.
you know?
Can you not negotiate the price? Hey, can you increase the price 50 cents, 70 cents, and let's do like a small order?
Yeah,
They're open to negotiate because suppliers from China, they're open to negotiate generally.
exactly. But the thing was like it's all about if you need it. So like back when I had that order to try to submit to Cambodia, increasing the costing significant. The whole benefit, like the why I was doing that was to try to get a cost benefit, right? So right now, yeah, you can increase the costing from the break the MOQs for you for sure because you have huge benefits to manufacture and move outside of China. Um, but so I think people just don't realize like how big the MOQs are, or if it's not big MOQs. So like for example in Sri Lanka, a lot of the big apparel manufacturers don't have high MOQs, but they have high yearly commitments. So what
Mhm.
that looks like is you have to commit to $1 million in purchasing for the year. And then once you commit to that, then they'll run a 300 piece project for you. But they need to know that they're going to be like a real partner for them. So they're looking for more established brands like that.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say that don't make them feel like you're doing a short-term project. Nobody likes that. Nobody invests into that. Um, a lot of suppliers in China, before the tariff, they never had this kind of issue. So whenever you approach them, of course, they ask you if you're an established brand, what's your website, what's your Amazon store, you're a newbie. They understand. The suppliers in China, they have a lot of experience, versus export experience too. They know they're like I call China all star versus other countries like a rookies. You know, if you like basketball, because they know the export, they know what is OEM. Uh, they even tell you things before you ask them. You know, suppliers in China, they're so experienced actually. So versus some of the suppliers, they don't know what's the export terms too much. So that's very interesting. You mentioned we were trying to do shipping with one of a supplier from India, and they do a lot of production for domestic market, but they don't have really much for export. Like they didn't have even an export license. So the customer had to wait almost 2 weeks until they get their export license to start shipping out of the country. So when you actually find suppliers, ask them where they export, what's their main market. So if you find a supplier in India and if you ask them if they ever manufacture product for the US, If they say no, their main market is Southeast Asia, then maybe the quality, the raw material they're using, or the labor they're using may not be the best for you. It's even in China. You could ask them what's their main market. Some of them, they would say it's Europe and North America. Some of them will be like, hey, our main market is Asia, let's say Korea, Japan. They all have different quality requirements. Nothing wrong with asking these questions. Before we wrap up, Isaac, what is the best way to verify these suppliers? The good questions that you can ask. We mentioned, don't tell them if you're looking for a shorter term business. Sometimes it's good to be honest. Sometimes you could like be a little bit more politic. But what's the best way do you think you can approach them to the new suppliers? Like best questions for the new markets if you don't have experience really too much in the sourcing.
Yeah, I would say you use ChatGPT as much as you can, in the sense of it's very easy for someone who knows a specific product or industry really well to be able to realize that you aren't an expert in that space and don't have experience. So if you go and you're like, yeah, we import $1 million a year of these specific types of product, and then they're asking you probing questions about the specs and you don't have all that or you answer it wrong, it's very easy for them to be like, no, this guy's, not telling the truth. Like he's clearly not that big. So what I like to do is when you find factories that you're going to approach and try to negotiate with and work with, really do a deep dive into their company, understand them, and build the inquiry really around like them. Hey, really excited to work with you. I saw that you primarily export to the US market, which is really good for us, and you have these different certifications. You work with these brands, which we admire. Additionally, I saw, your employees, you have 500 employees, which I think is going to be a really good fit for us because, we're looking for a factory that's, larger, but we're not too large as we're trying to grow our company. We've been in business for this long. We specialize in these products. We're expecting sales to, increase to X amount of dollars this year. Ultimately, I really liked your website and like what you guys have to offer, blah, blah, blah. So like you could say that versus, hi, what is MOQ? What is price? What
Sure.
what do you think people are going to go and resonate with and want to work with? And I think people, slowing down and trying to build a relationship from the start is a really good way for them to take you seriously.
I agree. Isaac, I think these are like really good recommendations. Please tell us like how people can find you, how they can reach out.
For sure. Yeah. So I'm just at the sourcing guy on social media. So Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. We have a ton of new content coming out on YouTube from an educational perspective, teach people how to source outside of China. Additionally, I have a product sourcing mentorship at thesourcingguide.com and a whole product sourcing course. So if you want to go and learn how to, source products like a pro and learn all the ins and outs of how to source globally, you can join that program as well and get mentored by me.
All right, perfect. Isaac, thank you so much. And if you guys have any question about the tariff, HTS code, shipping, bonded warehouse, you can always visit Forceget.com and you can send an email to sales@forceget.com. It comes to me. I actually start growing my YouTube channel too. I went from 1,500 people to 10,000 almost in 2 weeks, just
Wow.
because organic content I created. Thanks to my team, my marketing team, they've been great. And thanks for organizing this webinar in the short term. They've been very helpful. So guys, feel free to reach us out if you have any further question. Don't panic, but also don't put all your eggs in the same basket. Start looking at different markets, different sourcing channels, and stay in touch with your supplier for the solutions together. We're all on the same boat in here, whether you sell wholesale or Amazon e-commerce. Feel free to reach out if you have any question. All right. Thanks so much, everyone. And Isaac, thank you so much for joining.
See you guys.
Take care.